Thank you for joining me today. My name is Alexie. I work on programmatic demand partnerships at Broadsign with both DSPs and agencies. This is our 10th webinar in our out-of-home webinar series with a goal to provide out-of-home thought leadership to both publishers and brands and agencies. But first, some housekeeping. I hope to deliver a seamless experience, though sometimes my Wi-Fi can be a bit slow, so I'll apologize in advance. If there's something you want to ask, please jot it down in the chat field, and we will address your question at the end of the webinar in our Q&A section. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and made available online at broadsign.com. Today, we'll be exploring how digital marketers heading into the holiday season can plan with more certainty in times of uncertainty. This webinar was made for media buyers and their clients to help them understand consumer behavior leading into Q4, though there are some insights that publishers can also use to position or reposition their inventory to brands and agencies. I know it's August, but most brands and agencies are thinking about this. For decades, the day after Thanksgiving has attracted massive crowds and hysteria outside of malls and stores nationwide. Thousands of shoppers gather sometimes as early as 5 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day itself, jostling for the mad dash into their favorite shops to grab Black Friday doorbuster deals on flat screen TVs, jewelry, toys, winter jackets, and more. Since 2005, it has been the busiest shopping day of the year. To lure shoppers, retailers typically open their doors very early in the morning, and in some cases, Thanksgiving evening, and offer special sales and promotions to reward shoppers that arrive early. For consumers, Black Friday heralds in the shopping deals, while for marketers, Black Friday heralds their opportunity to cash in on their marketing bets. The modern day digital marketer trades uncertainties. Investing budgets on what they predict will happen based on what has occurred before. We've built engines to understand past behaviors in order to forecast and shape what we want to happen. The holiday quarter is the biggest gamble for most digital marketers. It can make or break their year. Last year in the US, brick and mortar retail and e-commerce spending combined totaled 1.1 trillion. 2019 was the first holiday season to pass the $1 trillion mark in retail sales. In this quarter, in Q3, marketers are typically polishing up their holiday marketing plans. Marketers build their plans on typically what has worked last year, accounting for some slight market differences. But this year is vastly different. The first half of this year brought us a pandemic with such unprecedented impact that we have never seen before. I apologize for being another webinar that uses the word unprecedented, but it really is the only word that can concisely describe our current climate. And I promise to only use it one more time today. The public expects organizations to do the right thing. Brands need to be authentic, relevant, and helpful. Promoting public service is more important, with some exceptions. Tone and positioning are crucial. Brands need to shift towards education and informing customers and avoid selling or behaving in any way that could be viewed as opportunistic. Companies must strike a balance between a good source of information and not contributing to information overload. Consumers are becoming overwhelmed by the number of COVID-related messages that they receive on a daily basis. Many companies that implemented robust MarTech stacks and e-commerce platforms prior to COVID are faring well. Those whose stacks were incomplete or not fully utilized now have the opportunity to improve their functionality, drive employee awareness, and educate customers who are not so tech savvy on how to make full use of their platforms. while physical locations are closed or partially open. Then that led to the global recession. The measures taken by countries around the world to manage the COVID pandemic, restricting travel, shutting non-essential businesses, and implementing universal social distancing policies, resulted in severe economic consequences. According to the World Bank, the global economy will shrink by 5.2. That would represent the deepest recession since the Second World War, with the largest fraction of economies experiencing declines in per capita output since 1870. The social impact of the health and economic crisis then boiled over in June and manifested itself in the recent civil protests. These protests are not only about racial injustice, but are also about the systemic inequalities that have recently seen America's poorest communities take the brunt of both health and economic impacts of the COVID pandemic. On June 6th, 500,000 people turned out in nearly 500 places around the United States. That was a single day in more than a month of protest that still continues today. Recent polls suggest that about up to 26 million people in the US have participated in demonstrations over the death of George Floyd and others in recent weeks. These figures will make the recent protests the largest movement in our planet's history. And in less than 3 months, the future of the world's largest economy is decided. With presidential elections coinciding with the beginning of the holiday shopping season, the upcoming 2020 election, like all general elections, pose an additional challenge for marketers. We'll dive deeper into this in the coming slides. Never in our shared history has a brand or agency faced so much uncertainty at one given time. We gamble on uncertainties, but it's easier when factors remain the same, are repetitive, are controlled, and are certain. Last month in July, both Target and Walmart announced it was closing its stores on Thanksgiving Day, ending a decade-long tradition of jump-starting Black Friday doorbuster sales. The move comes as stores are rethinking this year's Black Friday shopping bonanza, along with other key retail days during the holiday season. Stores always depended on big holiday crowds and work as much as a year in advance with manufacturers on securing items. Now, the virus has turned the holiday shopping model upside down. Stores have slashed orders and crowds are thin, with fears of a wave of virus cases in the fall. The biggest nightmare would be if retailers had to reclose during the most crucial time of the year. Retailers will pivot their business towards more online and focus on limiting the number of shoppers in stores. Like Target, other retailers will also likely start holiday sales even earlier to stretch out crowds. Things like Black Friday that marketers relied on are no longer a certainty. For the remainder of the webinar, I would like to provide insights on current consumer trends impacting holiday shopping behaviors and how out-of-home can help you craft better out-of-home media plans to address these behaviors. Like any good marketer, we should start with taking the pulse of consumer sentiment and spending behaviors. The past few months have not necessarily created new behaviors, but have necessitated adoption of emerging behaviors. Consumers are embracing a new consumerism, and it's a mindset that is likely to continue. We can summarize these behaviors as mindful and digital. Consumers are striving to make more conscious decisions on what they buy, what they waste, and how their dollar helps support social causes. Demand for local goods is growing as consumers seek out products they feel they can trust. Demand for goods produced or support people of color are being encouraged. Consumers are also turning to digital and omni-channel services. The adoption of e-commerce from previously uninitiated users has accelerated, and consumers have increased their use of services such as contactless payment and curbside pickup. and plan to maintain this behavior into the future. I've broken out these consumer behaviors into 4 key areas. First is conscious consumerism. Second, acceleration of e-commerce. And related, the touchless economy. And fourth, presidential elections. In a few short months, the devastation wrought by COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact on consumers' attitudes regarding socially responsible behavior, their own and that of companies they expect to patronize them. In a time that consumers are reporting a decline in income and their overall well-being, they're also reevaluating their responsibility to society, as well as that of other companies they buy from, along with their own purchasing decisions. Based on a study conducted by Accenture released last month, they asked respondents their likelihood to sustain specific behaviors post-pandemic. They found that consumers are more mindful of food waste. They are exploring more sustainable options. And when possible, buying products that are produced locally. And shopping more cost consciously. Conscious consumerism has been a trend for some time now, but was actually on the decline the past few years, since 2016. According to social responsibility marketing consultancy called Good Must Grow. They noted that over the past few years, they have seen an erosion of socially responsible choices. But the past few months, or last 6 months of 2020, has been a catalyst for community and consciousness. Even before the pandemic, the most profound behavioral change in commerce was a shift to digital shopping. Many product categories had already been significantly disrupted by digital over the past 2 decades: books, entertainment, and consumer electronics, while others like apparel were earlier in their transition to digital. Most importantly, one of the largest consumer categories, grocery, was still nascent in terms of its transition to digital. According to Nielsen, just 4% of grocery sales in the United States came online in 2019. The COVID-19 pandemic is rapidly accelerating the transition to digital commerce. According to a recent Adobe Digital Economy Index study, e-commerce has accelerated by 4 to 6 years in the past 6 months. In the US, 24 of surveyed shoppers went online to purchase something they would normally buy in store. And 87 of them said they'd do it again. eMarketer forecasts that 204 million people ages 14 and older will make an online purchase. And of that, 2/3 of them will be 45 and older. Here we look at e-commerce spend from 2019. And the average holiday spend from 2019. Now, when we overlay the e-commerce spending levels from 2020, we are already tracking above holiday levels from November, December 2019. The pandemic resulted in over 93.9 billion extra spent online since March. Which leads me to the touchless economy, whose full potential has yet to be determined. The touchless economy is also referred to as internet economy, web economy, or digital economy. This also includes activities such as online meetings, live stream training or events, online education, telemedicine, but most importantly, BOPIS, buy online, pick up in store. I spent some time exploring the impact of the touchless economy in my previous webinar, But it has greater significance to marketers during the holiday season, which has historically been heavily driven by foot traffic. BOPIS has already been seeing adoption as indicated by the red line. Earlier on the year and prior to COVID, BOPIS had already been making growth year over year. Due to the pandemic, but buy online and pick up in-store shopping had increased by 62% between February 24 and March 21st. But with the increased health crisis, BOPIS adoption saw rapid increase. Both BOPIS orders maintained a year-over-year growth of 130% in June. However, orders have ticked down slightly as stores began opening back up, with June seeing a 21% decrease in usage over May. Which leads us to the fourth consumer behavior, the presidential election. What does the state of the retail industry have to do with the presidential election? Epsilon studied the past two elections, 2012 and 2016, and its impact on consumer spending. Here is a snapshot of consumer spending for 2011 and 2013, non-election years. In 2011 is in red and 2013 in yellow. If we layer on consumer spending during the presidential election of 2012, we notice that consumer spending before and during election week was lower than the same weeks in 2011 and 2013. If we look at the 26th election, we see very similar results. Consumer spending in 2016 before and during election week was lower than 2015 and 2017 over those same weeks. These past two elections have shown a discernible dip in spending both 2 weeks before and during the week of the election. This comes right as the race for holiday sales starts, around the beginning of November. Consumer spending goes down during presidential elections. Why is this? Two things. Consumers tend to be more cautious because of the unknowns about who will be the next president and which party will control the Senate. And second, consumers are distracted. The advertising marketplace is cluttered with campaign advertisements, and consumers are constantly monitoring their mobile devices to check out the latest updates. With the election being top of mind and the closer we get to election day, spending decreases, which poses a challenge for marketers. What do all these behaviors imply? Overall, we have consumers who are more mindful in their purchases. They have less discretionary income. They are voting with their dollars. Spending is slowed because of the uncertainty of the upcoming elections. Their shopping patterns have been disrupted, evidenced by the acceleration of e-commerce and BOPIS. And we are heading into a quarter with increased competition for the minds and hearts of consumers with a combination of holiday and political advertising. What are the implications for marketers? There are two main areas to consider. The end of browsing, and second, the detriment of short-termism. Prior to the pandemic, many brands used the opportunity to influence consumers while the consumer was in the store, either through point-of-sale opportunities or mobile display and search. While shopping restrictions now in place as a result of COVID-19, things like social distancing, closed changing rooms, intense cleaning procedures, quarantining goods, the inability for multiple customers to touch the same thing consecutively have helped to increase the adoption of e-commerce and the touchless economy. Now those opportunities to engage with consumers in store while they are browsing are becoming less and less. And along with that is the opportunity to get into that shopping cart. The future of physical browsing could be in jeopardy. Could we see the end of browsing? Based on research from C+R Research, a market insights agency, grocery shoppers decreased their weekly trip from 2.3 a week to 1 a week. 73% are making fewer trips to the grocery store. Now, those numbers are for for grocery stores and for fast-moving products. Now, how about non-essential retailers like department stores? A study was conducted by Quidini, it's a retail choreography software company, who surveyed consumer reduction in visitation to non-essential retailers. They found that 52% eliminated visits to non-essential retailers. 30% reduced it, so 52% have fully eliminated, 30% heavily reduced, 14% reduced to some extent, and 4% have not reduced. With less consumers entering physical stores with lower visitation rates, resulting in less window shopping and browsing opportunities, this poses a challenge for non-essential retailers to get into a consumer shopping cart. With the recent cancellation of Black Friday from both Target and Walmart, non-essential brands can no longer rely on the holiday masses and must look elsewhere. Which leads me to our second implication for marketers, the detriment of short-termism. With the combination of less discretionary income for non-essential goods and services, disruption of retail channels, increased ad clutter in Q4 from holiday advertisers, and an influx of political ad dollars, it's estimated that another $4.5 billion will be spent leading into the election. Advertisers will increasingly shift budgets to more performance-based campaigns, focus on promotion in order to compete for audience. This is called short-termism. Short-termism refers to an excessive focus on short-term results at the expense of long-term interests, such as brand building. Short-term performance pressures on marketing initiatives can result in excessive focus on quarterly earnings, with less attention paid to strategy, fundamentals, and long-term value creation. But this is not new. Last year, the Harvard Business Review conducted a CMO study. They asked US marketing leaders, how much time do you spend managing the present versus preparing for the future of marketing? Overall, 341 leaders responded by reporting they spend 70% of their time managing the present and 30% preparing for the future. Global and local uncertainty caused by the pandemic risks exacerbating this trend. With a global recession on the horizon, marketing budgets will be under pressure, and the temptation for many marketers would be to refocus on short-term tactics that deliver immediate impact. A recent study was released by a company called Commerce Next that compared budget allocation between performance versus branding, pre-COVID and during. In January, when they surveyed, 20% of CMOs reported that budgets were skewed to performance, while 52% were balanced between both performance and brand, while 20% of CMOs were focused on branding. In June, they resurveyed them again. CMOs that were focused on branding slightly dipped from 20 to 18. CMOs that had a balanced approach earlier in January decreased and shifted to more performance-based initiatives. As now, 54% of CMOs report favoring performance over brand. The challenge and marketers face now is the increase in performance tactics from other marketers along with theirs. And when you combine that with the increase in political advertising, consumers will be distracted and your brand message can be lost in the online ad clutter of Q4. A strong focus on short-termism activities aimed to drive short-term sales lifts helping marketers make an impact more quickly compared to brand building, but with narrower and smaller paybacks that decay quickly once the activity itself has been finished. Short-termism tactics do not allow you to break through and set the foundation post Q4. So what are these implications for out-of-home planning and execution? I listed three. You need to use out-of-home to break through the clutter, use it to enable discovery, and most importantly, use out-of-home to build your brand. So how do you break through the clutter? Marketers have always been conscious of ad clutter on any given day, but in Q4 and a Q4 with a presidential election, the concern of ad clutter and their ability to break through the clutter is even greater. While simply turning up their digital ad spend, marketers should consider an offline approach and its impact on their digital channels to break through the clutter. When other marketers go left, you go right. In 2018, Netflix was looking to attract new writers, directors, and actors interested in working with them. Of course, Netflix had plenty of opportunities, but the company quietly bought a $150 million billboard on the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. In a world of targeted advertising, in some cases uncannily and uncomfortably accurate, a big, bold ad positioned above the street where your desired audience walks by every day still delivers results. With out-of-home, the following are some suggestions to help your message break through this clutter. First is start early. Given the influx of messaging from both advertisers and political parties, your message will need more time in the market to build awareness. Second, multiple formats should be used to create a sense of ubiquity around your brand and message. The out-of-home space includes dozens of formats, from billboards, digital signs, transit, and street furniture. There are certain strategic out-of-home placements that can go beyond the strength of a single execution and set brands apart from the competition. And last, use large formats, because in a smartphone world, the biggest screens still matter. The second implication for out-of-home is to enable discovery. During a quarter where there's competing brands for the same digital audience from other holiday shoppers and political advertisers, adding the disruption of brick and mortar locations, adoption of e-commerce, and BOPIS, where there are less opportunities for discovery, enabling discovery is increasingly a challenge. With the advancement of data and programmatic capabilities, brands can maximize every opportunity from every single out-of-home impression. The traditional thinking of using out-of-home placements has been either using it en route or in proximity to points of purchase. But in a time when those points of purchase opportunities have been disrupted, how can we use out-of-home to influence? How do you make use of every impression? First, consider using dynamic creative. Dynamic information that pertains to your product, such as directional copy, to locations, or product availability. This is an example from Burger King in the UK that incorporated unique information about the distance of a location in relation to a specific screen. 57% of those who noticed directions on a digital billboard have visited the business within 30 minutes of viewing the ad. Second, use your DSP's data capabilities to surface the best screen opportunities that index high against your audience in order to improve your targeting. And last, incorporate environmental triggers such as weather and traffic to increase the relevancy of your message. Here's an example of a McDonald's ad that used warm weather to promote their frozen lemonade, making it much more relevant. Given the programmatic digital age, brands have readily relied on performance marketing at the sacrifice of building their brand. Given budgetary pressures that to deliver results in a crowded Q4, marketers more so lean towards short-term executional tactics. But brand building has the ability to widen the audience pool that performance budgets work within. Without balancing both performance with brand building, performance campaigns eventually become difficult and costly to deliver on. Now considered a direct-to-consumer superstar in 2016, Casper mattress was just an emerging e-commerce startup. Without a brick and mortar footprint, they were initially heavily invested in online and short-termism goals. But they were cognizant its customer pipeline would eventually dry out. In recent years, they have significantly increased their use of out-of-home across multiple formats, ranging from billboards, subway, and taxi rooftops. Prior to the pandemic, mass retailers, relied heavily on the traditional product flow, where manufacturer to retail store to consumer. With the pandemic, the connection to that retail store has become unreliable. Similar to Casper, other DTC brands, every brand now is a direct-to-consumer brand. Brands now must act like a direct-to-consumer product. So what can we learn from DTC brands? Direct-to-consumer brands were historically short-term, as they were inherently digital. Many DTC brands have cultivated an online storefront for themselves on social platforms such as Instagram, in lieu of a physical store. The mobile phone became their storefront. Nielsen recently released their 2020 digital out-of-home advertising report. It shows a strong correlation between out-of-home's impact on mobile activity. The greatest value for marketers since digital out-of-home is unaided recall rate is at 47%, clearly surpassing mobile at 35% and television at 22%. 45% of respondents that were exposed to out-of-home searched the advertiser's website on their phone. 21% of respondents that were exposed to an out-of-home ad made a purchase on their phone. As the DTC industry evolved, they began to turn to more traditional forms of media like television and out-of-home. What DTC brands have learned is that as they seek to grow, digital channels have become saturated and expensive. However, out-of-home advertising is a perfect outlet to share their message. In order to move from startup to a household name, there comes a time when online alone cannot deliver on their long-term brand building. The greatest value for marketers since out-of-home is the ability to build a brand. Here are some suggestions on how to build a brand using out-of-home. First, use high traffic screen opportunities that command higher reach and high frequency. This enables you to build up your top funnel. Second, context location to increase relevancy and ad recall and awareness. Here's an example from Mercedes-Benz in Australia that used the context of the screen's location, which was proximity to a beach, to inform the creative's placement. And finally, align with online campaigns. No one advertising channel works alone. Out-of-home screens complements other mediums to create a more omni-channel marketing campaign. In a European study, researchers found that 80% of people visited a specific Facebook page after viewing an out-of-home ad, and that 25% sought out the brand on Instagram. A combination of outdoor ads and social media resulted in a campaign that was 30% more effective than social channels alone. The first half of the year brought a lot of uncertainty. First, a global health crisis, then next, a global recession, next up, civil unrest. When the world is dealing with the aftermath of a global pandemic and ensuing ramifications, there are times when brands need to hit the pause button to read the room and read it right. This has really pushed brands to be reactive and focus on short-term goals, too distracted to anticipate what's to come. Couple that with the anxiety over the political environment, marketers have the daunting task of navigating through all those uncertainties while still delivering on Q4 revenue goals. Consumers that look to trusted brands to provide them with safety and security in trying times. They want to be assured that the brands they choose are in control of their supply chains, transparent and trustworthy. The way the brands deal with the current climate influences consumers in the future. Early in the pandemic, out-of-home proved vital to delivering important health messaging, illustrating the medium's potential to build trust and provide guidance. This coming quarter will indeed have its challenges, but opportunities as well, as I have presented. Now, as we enter the biggest shopping season, marketers have the opportunity with out-of-home to stand out and build trust, especially when used with data and programmatic capabilities. This is an opportunity to use out-of-home to step away from the herd to move forward, laying in the foundation to successfully respond to what comes next.